What's up, everybody? My name is Chris, and prep time is still important. Let's get that out of the way right now. GMs, I know it's tempting to try to prep for every possible outcome. I know it's tempting to throw every hour of prep time you can into a session, but please don't. It's just not worth it, as even if you did, the party's just gonna kick down the tavern door, throw a fireball in the center, then question why the quest giver is dead. I may be speaking from personal experience, but that's beside the point here. Prep time is still important, and I'm gonna be going over how I prep to account for my players' driven chaos that is really just a tornado of fireballs and lightning, and it's fun, but it's impossible to prep for. But I figured out something that's probably gonna help you, and I hope it helps you too. But before we get into that, I wanna say a special thank you to our patrons for the day. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. You guys are fantastic. I love you all. Amaldine Shepherd, Rutana, and Boom Mike, you are my top tier patrons, so you get a top tier thank you. You are amazing. Thank you all so much. With that in mind and that spiel out of the way, let's get into the video. Listen, I'm what's known as an improv GM. I have a very small list of notes. Typically, it comprises of something of like, kobold named Barbara, ? Fighter elf, hot, himbo, definitely. Like that's my typical like breakdown of notes for any given session. And I might include like a boss monster they might be able to face. And that's about the extent of my prep time for sessions for the most of the time, because I improv a lot of things. It is not everybody's go-to style, but prep is still very important. Some of my best sessions have been improv, but I've had more good sessions that are just actually prepped and I actually put thought into than anything else. Back here on that wall, there's a map of a city that I made called Etopresnia. I put probably about 2 weeks of prep into that session because that was a false Hydra arc. That was like 3 sessions of pure false Hydra mind-numbingness, and it was fantastic. Not because I improv'd everything, because I went through and I prepped a lot of the key points that my party was gonna hit, but I didn't tie those key points down to any specific thing. Because the number one key point I have in mind here is flexibility as prep. You wanna make sure your prep is as flexible as humanly possible, because no matter what you do, you can't account for your players going to the blacksmith versus the armorer. But you can make sure that whatever those persons were gonna say, if you needed them to talk to the blacksmith for some certain information that they need right now, all of a sudden that information belongs to the armorer. It just shifts that little location of that information, and it changes nothing from the player side. We know things swapped around, but they don't. Nothing changes on their side except that they know that they made the right choice and found that information the right way. In reality, we just shifted stuff around. We made it easier for them to find it. So sure, we had to like flip those little arrows around, but it worked out and the players understand exactly what they need to do now. Sometimes they might just skip an area entirely. Hey, I'm gonna go to city A versus city B. You were expecting them to go to city B, so you prep city B. You could just say, hey, hold on, I don't have the stuff planned for this. Can we go to city B instead? Or you can take the information for city B and just shift it over to this side. Just move it over. City A is now city B, and city B is now city A. The names might be a little different, but all the quest lines that might be in those locations, that's what's important here. Their players didn't know those things existed until you tell them. The world exists that your players are in, but they don't know everything. You're the only one that knows how the world is built, how the world's set up, and all the quests and all the storylines within that world. So unless you tell them something, it's not canon. As soon as you tell them something, that's when it becomes canon. So until they actively ask, and until you actively give them those words, everything's fluid. Nothing is ever set in stone, and even some things can be set in stone, but changed later. Sometimes somebody was lying. Sometimes somebody wasn't telling the full truth. Sometimes it was a half truth, and sometimes they were just making shit up. You never really know until you actually figure it out in the moment. And the main reason a lot of people don't really think about that is because we've been conditioned by video games. This is not a video game's bad, tabletop games are better. No, just we've been conditioned by video games to think that if we miss something, it's gone forever. Like in most linear story games, if you pass point A and go to point B, you can't go back to point A. Open world games are different. And that's really how I like to see these D&D games more often than not. I like to say that if my party misses something and they want to go back to a dungeon, sure, they can go back to the dungeon. There's going to be more enemies. There's going to be stronger enemies. They might even be more loot there. Video games have really trained us to think that we have to collect everything before moving on. And that's not the case. If we miss something in D&D, there's always something else that we can use with it. We're not losing that item or that quest to the ether. We can just move it further along the line, drop it in there, modify a couple things, make it stronger. That's something that the players can go through, and that's something that's gonna make it a lot more fun for them, I think. And with that in mind, it really does lend to the idea that prep is good, because prep really is good. But like most friends, if you have a friend over for too long, they overstay their welcome. Over prepping is not that great either. Like, prepping is good. Under prepping is bad. Over prepping is bad. You want that nice little Goldilocks zone of prep time that you want to use and you want to just throw to your players in that way. Over prepping is a trap that you can fall into where you want to prep for every possible single distinction that you can get into, but it's just not going to help. Because no matter how many times you want to try and plan out the little branching elements, unless you know exactly what your players are going to do, it's not going to happen. It's just not actually going to happen in the slightest. You might drink a polymorph potion, all of a sudden you're transforming into some form of giant flying bison. Who knows? But surely as hell, that was not planned for by the GM. So with that in mind, don't over prep at the same time. Make sure you prep just enough so that you are confident in the story that you can get out there, that you're confident in the game that you're about to play, and that everything else is kind of just improv at that point. Much like over prepping, under prepping is just as bad, but improving is your friend. And it's not just yes and, it's also yes but, no and no but. There's a lot of different things that you can do with that one. A lot of people have it in their head that improv is just yes and, but it's not. Sometimes you have to say no, but whenever you say no, you don't want to be a no, stop, that's the end of it. You want it to be a no, but this, or no and this. It's something that you can keep the story going. I really like to refer to that from like Powered by the Apocalypse games as failing forward. You might fail a skill check, you might fail this task, but it's not the end of the session. It's not the end of the story right there. Unless your players die, of course, then that's the end of the story right there, and you have to completely remake characters, and you might just, start a brand new story at that point. Who knows? I know in one session of ours, as soon as we die, if the entire party dies, we're going and we're transporting to Dinosaur Land. Like this story right here, it's still gonna keep going, except we're just not gonna be a part of it. We're gonna get shown off to another continent on the other end of the world, and it's gonna be Dinosaur Land, just Jurassic Park all over the world. It's like we're gonna be playing Ark, and it's gonna be terrifying. We're gonna be back at level 1, so that's gonna be... It's gonna be deadly. It's gonna be fun as hell. At the end of it, improving is your friend. It's not the only thing you should rely on, but it's also not the thing that you should be afraid of. You shouldn't try to eliminate improv in general, because if you don't improv, you're not really doing your NPCs justice. You're not really reacting to them how everybody would react to them. Like, players are a menace to society. Name anybody else who can just bust into a general store, drop $500 on the counter, ask for some like rare metal artifacts, not find them, pick the gold up, and still give like $100 tip as they walk out. Like, nobody else does that except for these crazy ass adventurers who can do this type of stuff. Unless you're like my players who are like super stingy with any gold that they get. It's not my fault you guys tried to buy a $1,500 carriage. Like, why though? Why? I'm amazed at how fluid they are with money when they can just throw it at everything and it solves their problems. Except at the same time, they're like, maybe that 2 silver is a little too much to spend. Really? Listen, your players are already winging it, and you can wing it too, okay? Improv's fine to use. Just make sure you have it based around a plan that you already have in place. The plan doesn't have to have anything rigid. The plan doesn't have to have anything set in stone or solid. Everything is fluid in Dungeons & Dragons or in any other TTRPG. Things are fluid, things are constantly changing, and you don't have to be set into a single set pattern here, okay? You can have a lot of fun. This is gonna be a great time for you all and your friends. Because if I'm being honest here, not planning has led to some of my most memorable sessions ever. Like some of my favorite ones, like on my Chaos Brigade Twitch stream, where it's like Dungeons and Chads, where they like had a reverse Shrek situation going on. Or maybe even planning has led to some of my most memorable situations, like the False Hydra one. There have been memorable sessions on each side of the spectrum and unmemorable ones on both sides of the spectrum too. The key is finding what works best for you, and in my opinion, I think it's best to kind of like set up quest A, quest B, quest C, and just let them be set in wherever the players are gonna find them next. You can move quest A to town B all of a sudden. Like, those are things that you can do. It's completely okay for you as a GM to do that. That's what I do a lot of the time, and that's how I get my players to, go through the quests that I've actually planned for and actually prepped for and want to run without taking away their player agency, because they can still say no to the quest. It's just, that's the quest that was put there in front of them, and they can just do that then, so. Take that as you will. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't, but either way, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to click that subscribe button down below and that little bell icon to get notified for my video uploads. Be sure to check out the Patreon, like I said before, so you can be updated for any like extra behind the scenes stuff or stuff like that you might enjoy. That in mind, I love you all. On this side of the screen, there's gonna be a video that's gonna be something that YouTube thinks you're gonna like, and the other's gonna be a playlist of Avatar Legends content I think you'll genuinely enjoy. I can't wait to get my physical version of the book, and I got my PDF copies, and it's so fucking nice to look through it all. I can't wait to showcase it more on the channel. I love you all, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.